We were for a minute.
Thanks, Janet. He's trying to work out his
You want me to start the recording? Yes, thank you.
Yes, we do.
Yep.
We are now on.
Now you gotta turn your mic on.
I don't have it. Welcome, everyone. The first thing is we have a public hearing before our regular council meeting starts. So I'm going to call the public hearing to order. Do we have any comments? This is on our 2022 tax budget. Okay, we will close the hearing. Thank you. What? Okay. You're cold? Yeah, you could open a window. I mean. Open a window. Okay.
Want me to call roll?
What? Now I'll do it. Okay, we're going to call the meeting. I had to wait for 6 o'clock. We're going to call the meeting to order for the council July 10th or 13th to 2021 meeting. Roll.
Alberter. Frankel.
Here.
Sog. Steinbrink.
Here.
Turner.
Here.
Welsh.
Here.
Whitney.
Here. Now I need a motion to appoint.
I'd like to interrupt. I'd like to move that Janet be appointed clerk pro tem in Beth's absence.
Second.
Ed second.
Alberter.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Sog. Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes,
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Okay, the next
Oath of office now.
item on the agenda is the oath of office for Craig Steinbrink. Craig, do you want to come up here? If you'll, oh, sorry, forget about these microphones. If you'll repeat after me, I, Craig Steinbrink, do hereby swear
I, Craig Steinbrink, do hereby swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
the Charter and the ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
and that I will honestly,
that I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
discharge my duties as a council member
discharge my duties as a council member
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed
according to the law and to the best of my ability.
according to the law and the best of my ability.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the oath of office to Jacob Conte and Julian Mangaluci, two of our new firefighters. I'm going to do Julian first, and then I will do you. So if you want to stand over here. Okay. And you repeat after me. Raise your right hand. I, Julian Mangaluci, do hereby swear that I will support
Hereby swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gatesville,
and that I will honestly,
that I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
discharge my duties as a firefighter
discharge my duties as a firefighter,
to which I have been appointed
which I have been appointed
according to the law
according to the law,
and to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Welcome. I'd like to have Julian's mother come up here, please. She's going to pin the badge on him. Not so easy. Thank you. Now switch with me. Jacob, raise your right hand. I, Jacob Conte,
I, Jacob Conte,
do hereby swear that I will support
do hereby swear that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
the Charter and ordinances,
and that I will honestly,
and that I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
discharge my duties as a firefighter,
discharge my duties as a firefighter,
to which I have been appointed
which I have been appointed
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability.
and to the best of my ability,
So help me God.
so help me God.
Thank you. Now we need Jacob's mom. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the election of Council President Pro Tem.
Mayor, I'd like to nominate Sandra Turner for that position.
Second. I will second.
I think we had Ed.
Oh, sorry. Alwarder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Hog, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes, okay. And next, we'll do the oath of office for that. Pull it in after. Raise my right hand. I, Sandra Turner, do hereby swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America, the Constitution of the State of Ohio, the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills, and that I will honestly, faithfully, and impartially discharge my duties as President Pro Tem to which I have been appointed according to the law and to the best of my ability. Congratulations. Wait a minute.
My mother would love to be here to pin something on. Thank you all for your support, and I look forward to serving the council.
Okay. Got a lot of, okay, next is, next is Dean Haynes, who's joining us from First Energy. And would you like to come up to the, Dean, where are you? Come up to the podium.
Okay.
And we welcome you. Thank you for coming back.
Thank you for the invitation. See everyone in person. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So last time, Dean Hain, I'm with First Energy. I've been with the company a little over 30 years, various positions through Penn Power, Ohio Edison, CEI. This position is about a year ago, and then unfortunately we're in the midst of COVID, so haven't been able to get out and see everyone like we'd like to. But now that that's breaking loose, it's nice to see everybody's face, and glad to see everyone in attendance back here. We met online back in January, I believe, right after we had the big storms. And needless to say, on everybody's mind is the outages, the frequency of outages. I think a lot of us can understand with the weather conditions created a lot of that. We're out of that now, hopefully, and hopefully those conditions don't return for a while. But it did cause us, I got a lot of calls from Mayor Schneider as well as other community officials and asking us to, what are we doing about things? Are we looking at things or just going by the wayside and whatever happens? And outages are very important to us. We don't want to see anybody go without power, whether it be for a few seconds, a few hours. Unfortunately, I think we can all agree they're going to occur at some point in time, whether it be storms. We live in beautiful communities around here with all the vegetation, the trees. Unfortunately, what comes with that are the squirrels and the animals that run around and can cause some problems as well. So we do what we can to avoid the outages, but when they do happen, we try to get to them as quick as we can. So going back to January, there were some concerns, and I had mentioned that especially with the trees, tree maintenance is a big issue. And back in 2020, throughout the year, there's 6 of the 7 circuits that feed the village and weave in and out in different areas. Those were trimmed. It was we didn't get to see the benefit of that because of the storms that came in. But it looks like this year things are a little bit better. We haven't had a whole lot of data yet. It's only been a few months. I hope things will continue. There's one additional circuit, I believe it's up off of Somme Center, Cedar area, which will be trimmed in 2023. There are 4-year cycles that we trim. Given what came out of our meeting last January, we decided we needed to take a further look at some things. There were some issues, more outages than we were wanting to see. So I'll give a brief description at a high level. Some of these numbers don't mean a whole lot to us. They're placeholders where people have looked at things. So went back and did some additional vegetation patrols back in January and early February. 3 circuits were especially concerning to us. We patrolled a recloser from there back through forestry patrol downstream of some fuses. Several forestry patrols. And what come out of that, the results were 40 additional trees. Even though we trimmed last year, in the summer, we found 40 additional trees that needed some additional attention to get them back away from the wires or trim branches that could come down. So we addressed that, and that was done at the end of February. We did some additional visual patrols on 3 additional circuits, which posed some problems. We looked at fuses, different protection devices that we have in the line that will kick out when they see a fault. That's high current, which could pose a problem, damage some equipment, safety hazards. The first circuit, no equipment or issues found. Second circuit, some additional vegetation issues that were sent to forestry and taken care of. It was back in February as well. And additional patrol of some equipment. It says Woodstock Road and Cedar Road. We did find some issues and some equipment there, and those issues have been taken care of. Additionally, we did some fuse coordination studies, which the fuses are some protection devices that when they sense a fault, they'll break open. You may have seen them fall down or hang from the poles on occasion. Those need to be sized appropriately, usually the smaller ones towards the residences, and as you go upstream towards the substations, they'll be a little bit larger. It's important that those be in the correct order to minimize the amount of people that experience an outage. So we did some review of those and found some areas that we needed to replace some fuses, redo the coordination. That has been done and taken care of. And that was done in the middle of February. We had to upsize some fuses. And additional one that remains outstanding, which is scheduled for later this month. I don't have an exact date. It's a thermal scan of what we call 4MG, MG being the substation, being Millgate, which I believe is right out here somewhere. That circuit, we need to do a thermal scan. We go out and take a gun, look at everything, look for hot spots. Usually when there's a hot spot, that's an indication of potential equipment issues. So that's scheduled for this summer. We like to do it in the summer when the load on the system is the greatest. That gives us the best idea of weaknesses, potential weaknesses. So that will be done here at the end of this month. Early June, a lot of you may have seen a quick spike on a Saturday afternoon, sunny afternoon. 2 main feeds that come in from Mayfield substation up in Chester. Come in and feed the substation down here and also come in from up in Mayfield. Something hit those lines, something happened to cause a blip. Both of those circuits went out, as they're supposed to. Seen a fault, they opened up, tried to come back in. One of them didn't, the other one did. Some redundancy and picked it up. We are still looking for the cause of that. You may have seen some drones in the area, helicopters recently. I believe last week of June and this week as well. We did some patrols with the cars and on foot. We still haven't been able to find what could have been the cause of that. So we're working with our corporate office and we have a special drone team that that's what they specialize in, that is out there trying to go over those same lines, the whole distance, find out what could have been the cause of it, and hopefully eliminate, but hopefully it's not going to happen again. Yeah, hopefully we find something. Unfortunately, sometimes a branch comes down and hits a line. It's a quick fault, picks the system off. Hopefully it comes back on. Sometimes we never know what it is. Branch comes down, hits a line, comes back off. We don't know. So I would encourage residents, if you do ever see anything that any sparks, anything like that, hear anything in the area where you live, please call and report it. The more information we have, the better. We do have instruments out there that record stuff and tell us approximately where something may have happened. That could be within a couple miles stretch. So just because we have the data to show where an outage or what circuit it was on, we don't know exactly where it was and what caused it. So any help that, if somebody sees something, please call. And in general, report out all outages. Don't don't assume it's your neighbor or somebody's called it in. It could just be you and the drop to your house if it's overhead or even underground, you could have the problem. So the more information we know and the more people we know that are out, hopefully not that many, but we need to know. It helps us identify the problem, get everyone back on quick. Touch on the two different types of outages. There's the sustained outage, which we consider 5 minutes or greater. And then there's the momentary outage, which occurred back on, I believe it was the first Saturday in June. It's just a couple seconds. When the lights go off just for a couple seconds like that, it's designed to work that way. So if a tree limb or an animal gets into some of the equipment, or the limb comes down and hits a line, protection devices called reclosers on the line are meant to open up, break the current. They see there's a fault current, the current's high, need to open up and let that current go to ground. After a couple seconds, that device closes back in to see if the fault's still there. If the fault is still there, it opens back up. And it'll usually do that about 3 times. And on the 4th time, it'll open up completely, and then someone has to come out and investigate. If we did not use that equipment, which it is a nuisance when that blip goes on and off, the alternative would be the breakers at the substations would automatically go out, open up, and it would take anywhere from 2 to 4 hours probably to have that investigated for someone to come out. So we understand those momentaries can be a problem, but they're better than the alternative of an extended outage. With that said, if you see that something's happening like that, those blips on a recurring basis throughout the day, once every couple seconds, then done should be it. But if it continues to happen, please report it. There might be a branch or something in the line that needs to be cleared or keeps hitting the line, and we need to have somebody take a look at it. So if in doubt, call us, please. So main thing I want you to know is I talk with Mayor Schneider quite often. She's looking for updates. You're fortunate to have her. She does a good job. I continue to give her updates, and we will continue to work with the village to reduce the outages and do everything that we can. Unfortunately, some things are out of our control, but everything we can control, we'd like to try to do so. Any questions?
Got to turn this on. If you'll stand and say where you live.
Sure, hi.
Hi.
Couple questions I have. First, have there been any studies with other communities, their outages and differences there are outages the frequency of other and what their best practice? My second question is there, this seems like short-term fixes. This is again, there are long-term. I think
From the First Energy's point of view, as far as burying the lines, it gets quite expensive. Not always as easy it would seem either. There's a lot of infrastructure that's in the ground now. You would have to work around. I know different areas have looked at it in the past, and everyone has usually found it to be cost prohibitive. So we as a company have no plans to do that. That being put things underground. And even when they are underground, it's not foolproof. Things do move underground, and we find problems with that as well. And when there is an issue underground, that usually takes longer to find. So it would probably help in some ways, and it wouldn't be foolproof though. So a lot of cost benefit studies I think have been done. In an art.
Problematic area.
So we at this time don't have any plans to do this. When I say expensive, it's for a short section, it's millions of dollars.
I'm sure. My question has
Not specifically. So what we look at, usually the recurring problems are the trees. So we have a schedule that we maintain those. It's an industry best practice across the United States to trim those by every 4 years. Some say, well, could you do it quicker, every couple of years possibly? And it's been found, what I'm told, that the more you trim them, you decrease the lifespan of the tree. Or if you trim too aggressively, it increases the lifespan. So we trust the arborists and the people, different foundations across the United States to provide judgment on that, if we follow best practices. So comparing to other communities, when we look at our circuits, we compare against other circuits throughout, to some extent, communities, but our circuits wind in and out of different communities and not. Some circuits are unique given areas. And we do compare. There's a ranking list that we look at, and it's to say the worst ones get the most attention because there's more issues there. There are several communities that have similar characteristics as does this. Everyone is treated the same as far as how we look at things and how we evaluate it. So we don't say, like, say Gates Mills is this, and we just, we don't necessarily attach.
I'm saying variation, like,
There is some. You don't mind, I'm gonna walk back here and get, go ahead.
I was going to say, talking to the microphone more.
The problem is there's just so many variables. It's a little bit difficult, but we do rank things, compare them against circuits and ones that are performing. Not as well as the others, the most, all of them.
satisfaction.
She was talking about that. Facility.
That's great.
I heard say communities, but in either case, certain things are looked at compared to other utilities. But before even coming tonight, I've done a lot of research on it myself on utilities.
Hey, would you use the mic?
I'm sorry. Safety, Mayfield, different variables, and even the different say foundations or organizations out there agree that it's hard to truly put one against another because no two are exactly the same. Traffic patterns, people hitting poles, construction equipment. There are just a lot of different variables that.
I'm wondering. Shared two decided this organization looked at this, so if we were to enter the data.
Well, I'm just talking in general. I don't know of the specific studies. I just know that stuff has been done over a period of time. Yes, sir.
Mike, could you stand and say where you're from?
I'd like to see it.
I will look into that in the past when that's been requested. That data has not been available or provided, but I will check on it.
Okay. Somebody else had a couple questions behind you. Stand and say from where you live.
My question is regarding the voluntary outage conference. How often would you say it's more? Because the last 5 it happens anywhere 10 to 9 seconds, and it's fine, but I've lived in other communities, never had an experience with
It's not, I don't think, some instances I've witnessed since I've been in this position, some communities where it was like every hour. Now, with that said, I'm fortunate where I live. I've had maybe that I know of one in the past month. So I would say yours is probably more frequent than we would like. I would be happy to, I will forward that information on to have that area take a closer look at it. We might need to look at something there.
Okay, that's
Right.
good, because that brings me to my second question, which I know when we're on the call, January, when we spoke with us originally, one of the takeaways from that meeting was that we were going to do was the village was out to residents, make us aware of the fact that everybody should report an outage. I think one of the things that we got was that a lot of people have generators. They themselves, well, I have a generator, it's not really my concern, but it's all of our concerns. I also have a generator, but it is a concern of mine when the power is out. My neighbor's power, when our power is out, we also don't have phone service often for internet service, which becomes an interruption to our service. That being said, I'm not sure that is communicated to the village. And if it hasn't been sent out. Because had a handful of power outages this will have weeks, many of them due to weather, and that's understandable. But a lot of villagers that spoken to live all over the village, not just in the Hartley Road area, but way up on the county line. Those areas say to me that when I say, well, I'm reporting it. Oh no, I'm sure my neighbor reported it. Well, yes, but you also need to report it. And I explained to them why. We provided us with a good reason why, and maybe share that tonight with everyone, and then reiterate to the village. It would be helpful if it's not only in the PG, but perhaps a letter sent to every villager. Not everybody has time to speak thoroughly from beginning to end. So if it goes in one time, you're missing a lot of villagers. Whereas if something comes to mail, we're going to open it up for read it.
We did send out at the beginning of the year in February, the first energy brochure with all the tips and suggestions and what to do and how to do it to every resident in the village.
I understand, but maybe like email additional, some people don't, if they gone half a year, they get back, might not have gone all of their mail. I just show of hands, how many people have read that and are aware or how they. Okay, well, maybe people are here.
You are correct. We can't say it enough because there's always somebody that will call Dave and say, my power's out, and Dave will say, did you report it? And they'll say, well, no, my neighbor reported it. So there is something to be said for that. But we did provide that, which had a lot of good information in it. So it is a work in process. I think it'll be a continuing. I don't think there's any right. Do you have another question behind? Who else had a question? Okay.
Friday by 8:30. School. I've also had this horrible time. I stay in my clothes covered. So, I'm a little cold. The other thing about our lines are way too low. I reported it to them. It's not a problem. I said,
maybe explain about the cable and telephone,
And then
maybe.
one, a full meter was off.
Yep.
They said, oh, that's your responsibility. Put it back up. But it wouldn't go off. It's at fire and back on.
Well, if someone has concerns about their, oops, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh.
Up in that thing. So I'm not doing good service in our building. Since I moved here 3 years ago, I can tell you this, I'm the winter, spring, fall, summer, and for one time, we, and to me, I think the village. AK. But I'm not a- but- And good service.
I'm going to give you my card. I'd like if you could give me your address on that card and let me know so I can check a few things, but I appreciate it. And I apologize for, the inconveniences for everyone. But the information that was given to you, I will look into that. Yes. I'll be communicating with the mayor and any first staff. There may be some notes there that we can look back on. As far as pulling data together, I can tell you right now that a comparison back year to year does not exist. It would have to take a lot of time to pull that together. And for say maybe this year or last year, but going back, and I don't pull that together, but I will see what's available.
Yeah, we can provide it. Dean, could you explain some of the lines that are low are not First Energy? The order of go on the poles?
I'm not saying that when people complain about low lines that they weren't ours, but a lot of times, not always, the people do confuse everything out there on the pole with the electric. Generally speaking, the electric is going to be the highest if you have multiple things on a given pole. Electric's usually the highest, and then for the most part, the phone is on the bottom, and then cable that could be switched. But with all the different cable providers out there, we're finding more and more lines on the poles. So usually I get a lot of calls from municipalities about residents complaining about, not complaining, letting us know, informing us of a line being low for good reason, so we can take care of it. And then we find out a lot of times it's actually the phone or the cable. So ours is always going to be the tallest. If it's just one line coming in to your meter, well, it's pretty clear cut that it's ours, but please keep that in mind. Yes, sir. The wires themselves are generally, and I say generally because I've seen different things out there. But for the most part, those lines coming from the pole to the mast should be CEI's lines. 90% of the time. Not always. For whatever reason, different things have happened in the past and different guidelines may have been in place. But for the most part, they should be CEI's lines, and CEI owns up to that connection point in the mast. Now, the responsibility of the customer would just be, for the most part, is to keep things away from those lines, especially like vegetation. Keep things trimmed back so that limbs don't come in contact with those lines. But should that come down, we would need to put that back up. Correct.
Any other questions? Ed?
At the last meeting, we reviewed the fact that you do sell a service to cover outside lines and inside lines in your house. Your outside lines, I did subscribe to that service, and then we did have an incident and it did pull the wires down, but I was told that's my responsibility total and I had to pay for it. And you said you were going to look into that and see, because you do sell that service. I don't think I need a dusting and cleaning of the lines. I think I need, some coverage there, but I didn't get it. And you said you were going to research that and find out why.
Well, I apologize that slipped because now that you mention it, I remember it, but I didn't have that in my list. I apologize. I am not familiar with the details of that. We use a third party for that service. I don't know the terms and conditions off the top of my head, but we will look at that.
Thank you.
My apology.
Okay.
My question is all- okay, so it's a that I think from the website or,
Well, we could put that, you mean put the handout that we sent out on the website?
Sure, just general information of like how, rolling out, how it's kind of normal, what to do, how to report, et cetera.
Is it on your website?
It is on the First Energy website. There's a lot of information out there, usually found under outages or storm preparation.
Maybe we put a link.
I was under the impression I could have the communities messed up. I thought you guys at one time did have that out there but for the pamphlet that we sent out. I could be mistaken, but if not, it could be a link or the village could put it on their site. Either way.
We'll look into the link in the brochure on the website. Anything else? Well, thank you, Dean. I appreciate you coming. It sounds like maybe you'll come back
Yes.
and send us the answers. And take the address there for the one that's on Gates Mill or that she asked about, that
Yes,
it went
I will.
off once a week or whatever. And maybe he can pull something. We did find something out with one that we gave an address for the last time you were here down on Epping, and that helped. So
Yes.
it might be that that'll help again.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay. Um, Next on the agenda is minutes from the council meeting of June 8th, 2021.
Move to approve.
Second. Okay, Alwarder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Abstain.
Turner, Welsh,
Yeah.
Whitney.
Yes. Okay, next is minutes of the special council meeting of June 12th, 2021.
I move to approve.
Second. Second. Alwarder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Abstain.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Okay, next is pay ordinance 1251 for $405,744.77.
Move to approve.
Second.
Alwarder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Sog,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes. Thank you. Next is our financial statement with our treasurer, Tim Reynolds.
Thank you. Revenues for the month totaled 317,000. Expenses for the month, 343,000, producing a deficit for the month of about 26,000. There were no transfers made to other funds this month, and all operating departments are at or below budget for the year. Our all funds balance stands at 8,611,000. Included in that is our Encore investment account, which totals 7,611,000. This is my last report to council as treasurer. I'm resigning effective immediately so that the mayor can swear in my replacement, Steve Zimborski, tonight. I'm resigning because I will soon be changing my permanent residence status to another state, and as such, I'll be unable to serve in an elected capacity in the state of Ohio. It has been a great pleasure to serve with the mayor and members of council over the past 8 years. Together, you have built a collegial, respectful, and problem-solving oriented culture that greatly benefits the village. And I encourage you to reinforce those values as you move forward. It has been a particular pleasure to work with Chiefs Robinson, Minicello, Service Director Biggert, Finance Administrator Mole, and the rest of the village professional staff. Your tireless efforts and dedication truly make Gates Mills the wonderful community that it is today. I know that you will provide Steve with the same wonderful support that you have provided me over these years, and I'm certain that Steve will serve ably and work hard with you to preserve, protect, and provide for the welfare of our village and our residents. Thank you very much. That's my report.
Thank you, Jim.
We thank you for all your work and your friendship. It's been terrific.
Amazing.
We're going to
Thank
miss
you
you.
very much.
We're gonna miss
Yeah,
you.
we're going to miss you. Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of paperwork today.
A lot of people.
Okay, next I need a motion for appointing,
I would like to nominate Steve Simborski for
Second.
treasurer of the Village of Gates Mills.
I'll second that.
okay, thank you.
I'm not fast enough for all these jobs. No, we have to get her a speed typing course. Okay, Order,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Boggs,
Yes,
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes,
thank you. And Steve?
Next marks the spot.
Yes, the microphone marks the spot here. If you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Steve Zimborski,
Steve Simborski,
do hereby swear
hereby swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the United States of America,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
Charter and ordinances of the Village of Gates Mills,
and that I will honestly,
and that I will honestly,
faithfully, and impartially
faithfully, and impartially
discharge my duties as treasurer
discharge my duties as treasurer,
to which I have been appointed
to which I have been appointed,
according to the law and to the best of my ability.
all on the best of my ability.
Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, next is mayor's report, and I am going to report. I think most of the people in the room were there. We had a wonderful parade, and I thank everybody that from the village that participated, and all jobs well done. We have a band concert coming this Sunday from 5:30 to 7:30 out on the village green. And Ed arranged for COVID shots if anyone is interested, for any family members or somebody that's attending. The garden show is this next, also Friday and Saturday. And the times you'll have to look in, unless you know the times. I don't, in the pink sheet, but you could look those up. And as our clerk is not here, there is no report, so we'll move right into committee reports.
I have a report, Mayor.
Anne?
I'm not really a committee, but I would like to report on the fiber optic survey that was sent out to our villagers. And to date, our villagers could reply via postcard or online. and if you all, I hope everyone got it, please do respond. To date, we have had 342 responses. And of those, one of the questions was, are you interested in fiber optic, even if it may cost more? And of the responses, 82% indicated they would be interested and 17% indicated they would not. So more to come. I really think this is important to position ourselves as a village to have the best chance to offer good fiber. I know a number of companies are reworking their hybrid workplace policies, and I think it's hugely important that we stay on top and try and be ready in case we can cobble together a deal to give everyone good internet for work and for play. So that's my fiber update. And then on a separate note, I believe that in the pink sheet will be a little flyer on a group called Rust Belt Riders. And Rust Belt Riders have a very fascinating history. They started by going to restaurants and composting the trash from restaurants. And they now offer a service where they will come and bring a bucket to your home, and then they will pick the bucket up, and as a villager, as a participant, you pay and you get free compost in the spring, and you get the knowledge that you are helping to take some bad things out of the environment. So please look for that in the pink sheet. That's it.
Thank you. Nancy?
Compost.
I'd like to bring council up to date since we have the June report from the Planning and Zoning Commission. We had a July meeting last week, and one of the results of the meeting is in our packet, but the other one was the
Talk to
result.
your microphone more.
Oh, I'm sorry, from the Peter property. And this was particularly of concern to the Land Conservancy since the Peters property is adjacent. And when they put in some new landscaping, which included a pickleball court, the contractor did not, just to bring all of you in the audience up to date, they did not get a permit and put the pickleball court right on the property line. And then they damaged some of the Conservancy property in doing the work to put in the pickleball court. So we've had the Peters appear multiple times before the Planning and Zoning Commission to try to determine a good result for our neighbor and for the Conservancy and for the future, since we don't want anyone to do that kind of construction without a permit, not knowing that they needed to be a certain distance off the property line. It also turned out that that particular property is on a very steep grade, and it was the only flat spot on the property where the court could be built. So Mr. Peter and Mrs. Peter came to the last meeting of our commission and brought two options to try to mitigate the situation. First of all, they repaired, as I understand it, to the satisfaction of the Conservancy, the land that had been damaged and the things that had been done that were inappropriate. I think debris was deposited on the Conservancy land, which was not appropriate. There were two options, one of which was to move a portion of the court to the other side of the court. And the other, they had a consultant suggest that they could use the court with a smaller space, and that would involve taking 2.5 feet off of the entire court. And the commission provided a variance that in the event that they would take this 2.5 feet, so they would have a smaller variance at one end, the court's on an angle. So I just wanted everyone to know that that has been resolved and the commission did provide a variance. And we did ask Dave to consider citing the contractor and discussing it with the prosecutor so that we set an example for other contractors in the village. So it turned out this family happened to be on vacation when this happened, and they thought that the contractor had actually gotten the permit as might have been required. But so it was a very difficult situation. It's a very expensive process to move the court, and it was a really, I thought we came up with a really good result for
Okay,
that particular property.
thank you. Any other committee reports?
Yes, I have a few. As I reported before, we are doing an evaluation of the village engineer function. We have an ad hoc committee and had our first meeting a couple of weeks ago just to educate the committee on the role of the village engineer. Chris Courtney prepared material and presented that. And we now have two other engineering firms lined up to come in and present to us. I think there's interest among most of the council members. The meeting will be Monday, July 26th, I think it is. Let me just make sure, yeah.
26th or 28th?
Monday, July 26th at 7:30 in the morning. We will have one presentation, and at 8:30 we will have a second presentation. And we'll have a notice out for that public meeting. And now we're trying to get calendars meshed for the third, which will be Chris Courtney's firm, to be the third presenter. And I don't have a date for that yet, trying to mesh a couple of conflicts. So make a note of that if you'd like.
Chip, will
Yes.
there be minutes for these meetings for those that may have missed the first one?
Yes, yes. The second point is regarding the master plan. I have exchanged voice messages with the consultant that we were lined up to engage a year ago. And it looks like mid to late October will work on their calendar. So Todd, we will be updating that agreement and trying to nail that down and start to work once we get a little more specific. But I think it's looking like we can start to gear up towards the end of October.
Anything else? Anything else?
On anything on the cemetery committee, I noticed there's some activity here on lot splits and things, but no one's updated me on, what's going
There
on with our
really isn't
cemetery.
anything to update at the moment. It's been going on for a couple of years, and we're finally getting some land that's donated.
Any number of
I mean,
lots or any lots?
We have not done that part yet, Ed. Any other committee reports? Okay, next is Police Department. Chief?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Everyone should have received a copy of my monthly report. I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
How did the car get received at the parade?
Very well. What the mayor is referring to is Tesla vehicle that was donated to us anonymously by a resident. We're probably about a month away from having the vehicle on the road, still being outfitted right now. It's going to be outfitted, not there yet. So about 2 weeks away from that happening. We expect the outfitter to have it for about 2 weeks from that point. So hopefully this time next month, we'll have that in service.
Chief, I have one question. You said you're going to remove one of the marked police vehicles.
Yeah, so,
But is it really, really old?
it's old.
Well, I was just going to ask whether it would make sense to keep it so that we could park it around the village. I know that we've had some noise issues and other issues where people like to have a police car nearby. Would that make any sense?
We do have, I would say, a surplus of cars. This was an extra vehicle. It's unmarked right now. There was some,
Unmarked?
this one's unmarked. We have some transmission issues with the vehicle as well. So probably next month, it'll probably go to council. We'll get an offer from, a couple people who may be interested in purchasing it. And so we're hoping to move it on that way.
Well,
Chief,
this one says it's marked.
Well, it was marked. It's unmarked now.
Oh, it's already been removed. Okay,
Marking.
sorry. Just an idea.
so Chief, could you, on that same point of the noise, could you just briefly, inform the residents what you have done, including discussion at planning and zoning about the noise issue? So again, the residents have some sense of what kind of action's been taken?
Yes. So what we'll do is, I don't think I have to, not a surprise to anybody in here, but we receive a lot of complaints village-wide about speeding vehicles or whatnot. Obviously, we're a rather small department, so we can't be everywhere. Sometimes we should have, double the manpower that you do have. So we do the best of what we have. So we have a lot of tricks in our toolbox, so to speak. So, we have purchased another radar sign that's available. We have 2 now that, we put out, but people complain about, speeding violators. We get those out there when we can. We move around the village all the time. I would say we probably had them on River Road. We had both of them on River Road for probably the past 3 or 4 weeks between Sherman and Brigham Road. So we get those out there when we can. We run a tremendous amount of traffic and, our hot spots when we do receive, complaints about speeding vehicles. We spend a lot of man hours down there. We do deploy a marked police vehicle when it's not in use. We'll park a car in a certain area. It has a tendency to slow some people down. Many times they don't know, but it's kind of nice to put there to serve as a deterrent for speeding vehicles or whatnot. So we'll go ahead and do that. At times we'll bring extra people in as the schedule allows to run traffic details. We do that. So sometimes we do send some overtime officers away when we get tremendous amount of complaints. So we have that. They're called TED details, traffic enforcement details. So we have that available to us as well at times. So, we do what we can. And we recognize that speeding is a concern. And I can promise you we're doing the best that we can with our resources.
Chief, I'd like to also mention some of the noise complaints that we've gotten. And Chief and I have discussed different types of noises, and we're now looking into kind of reviewing all our ordinances concerning vehicle noise, party noise, construction noise, and trying to differentiate between those and enforcement of that. So we're working on that now.
And one other thing I would mention, it's not in my report. Kind of had a feeling it was going to happen, and it finally, did happen this past week. So we do have an officer who has tendered his resignation, who'll be leaving at the end of the month. He's going to a busier, larger agency. I've had some discussions with the mayor and also Councilman Franco, who chairs our safety committee, about the importance of filling this position. And so I think I have their support, and we'd like to move forward with that. So we're working on that. Any other questions?
Worth noting that the number of speeding tickets, I guess, or notices year to date is 350 versus last year 118. So you are reflecting, you are stepping up a lot of more.
Yeah, we're
surveillance.
doing a lot more traffic this year. And, I don't think it's any secret. I mean, traffic has picked up over the years. I've been down here close to 30 years here now. I can remember, working the road 30 years ago, and it was kind of quiet out there. Now it seems like, a lot of people are going east, heading Geauga County, and the amount of traffic has picked up tremendously. No question about that.
You're now ticketing for failure to have proper
Yes, we are.
registration?
Yes, we
I
are. That's
noticed the
correct.
State has lifted the moratorium.
Yes, thank you, Nancy, for reminding me. So if you haven't renewed your license plates, you want to go ahead and do that, because as of July 1st, the grace period has ended. So, driver's license, registrations, all that. So about a 3-hour wait at the BMV, I'm told. So, hopefully you had a chance to take care of that. Well, so anything else?
Other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Mayor.
Next is Service Department, Dave.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. You should have received a copy of my monthly report. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Dave, I have a couple comments.
Yes.
Parade was great. The service department did a great job cleaning up and setting up. Thank you. Some of the people at the community club mentioned where they're having the hot dog stand and there are no recycle bins.
Okay.
So we're hoping that next year Rumpke could put in some recycling bins.
Sure.
There's also some discussion about the confusion about recycling. And since there's so many things that aren't being recycled now, we're wondering if Rumpke could give some sort of either a list or a presentation or something, because villagers are confused as to what can be recycled and not recycled.
Yeah, I think we can either do it through Rumpke, or maybe a better source would be the solid waste district. I can talk to Christie up there, either one, but we'll certainly try and get some more information. I think that's a great.
Christie
idea.
did one webinar for us
Okay.
earlier, about a year ago.
Yeah.
We had about 35 people that attended, but I think things have changed since then, so it'd be important to do that. The other question people kept asking about the recycling bins in the back.
Yeah.
Are we still doing that? There was a point where they were going to
Yeah.
charge us.
Yeah.
To have those bins. Could you comment on that?
Yeah, we are still doing that. Initially, when we started that program with the cardboard, the company was paying because there was actually a market for cardboard and to recycle. And that was actually a program that the Land Conservancy had. We just held the dumpsters here for them. Times have changed, obviously, and at some point, there's not really a market anymore of cardboard. They actually have more of a problem of how to get rid of it because there was just so much of it. So they were going to start charging. And then at one time, they told us they were just going to stop. They recounted that, or they brought that back, and they are going to provide the service at no cost. So far that is going to stay. Who knows how long, but I haven't heard any other information that it'll be taken away. So we will be keeping those bins, and it's at no cost.
I appreciate the
To us.
update because there's
Sure.
a lot of confusion on that. And then
Yeah.
if you just get back to us on Rumpke.
I will.
Well,
Yeah.
Also, it's on the Rumpke website. We have a link on our website
Right.
to the because they do outline on their website what you can recycle. And so we should definitely have a link.
We can update it certainly and
To
put
make
something in
sure
the
that
pink sheet.
Everyone knows
I think
what
it's
can be recycled because they have changed it over the last
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and while we're having this discussion, we just recently got this in the mail.
Right.
And, you know, it doesn't reflect very positively about Gates Mills and recycling. And we know that there's some things like leaves that we don't do, and so we don't get
Well, they
credit.
broke it out finally. Leaves are
Leaves
broken
are
out
broken out.
separately. They have two columns now.
But it's still
Start doing leaves.
low. So
We're still low.
it's still low. So probably this
Yeah,
discussion.
no, I mean, they have
include how-
non-leaves is the point.
How we,
I think our food thing, if
Improve
they
this.
do it, will count toward that.
or what?
If we do the food
Compost.
recycling,
composting.
compost, that will count toward that.
Composting should help us move into the respectable category.
Okay.
Well, maybe we'll have to consider leaf recycling. If we could drop everything off at Carpenter Road, maybe landscapers could,
There's
Yeah.
no room in Carpenter.
there's no room.
There's no
Well,
room.
It's an idea.
With all the trees that have been down.
We should talk about it.
no
We could talk about.
room for
doing
improvement.
some Kind of
I've tried to be.
You know?
depot for recycling, not pickup.
Dave, can you give a quick status? I know Fox Hill East work has started reviewing the county roads, or Chris, can you just give a quick update where we are?
Sure. There are no other questions for me. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dave.
Off the hot seat.
Thank you. Chris Courtney, the village engineer. Brief update on the annual road program. Riverview has been fully recycled at this point. It's in the curing period. Once the curing period is done, we can move forward with the overlay of 3 inches. Fox Hill East are in the process of being recycled right now. Once that's done, that'll go into the curing period as well. And then we will start work on the county roads where we have work going on along with the asphalt rejuvenation application on Gates Mills Boulevard and crack filling and striping throughout the village and other areas.
And the Mayfield River construction?
Yeah, the Mayfield River construction, the bulk of the heavy lifting of the road construction is done. The pole foundations are in. They're now waiting for the new traffic signal poles, which the order time on those is 8 to 12 weeks, even longer post-COVID. So you may not see a lot of activity for the next few weeks until the poles get in and they can start putting those up along with some of the wiring and the signal heads and completing the rest of the project. But that's slated to be done the end of October.
Still on track for the end of October, you think?
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Chris. Next is fire department, Tom.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. You should have received a copy of the fire department report for June. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Not much cooking this month, so.
No. I'm kind of looking around the room again. You know, we did respond to a number of wires down calls because of the trees and the wires. So we do end up, going on those quite often. Whenever there's a power failure, you pretty much end up with alarm drops because of it. So either the fire department's responding to a fire alarm at a residence or responding to the actual call of the wire down. And it is one of the more hazardous type of calls that we go on, especially after dark. So if there are no other questions, okay.
Okay, so if you go out for a low hanging power line, do you then contact the illuminating company or do you evaluate it? What do you do in that instance?
Well, we identify which line it is. As was said earlier, the top tier on the pole are your power lines. And then you've got communication, whether it be phone or cable. So we identify the right agency, which is difficult, when it's not power. Because there's so many different companies hanging wire, pole to pole, companies going out of business, leaving their wires on the pole. So sometimes it does become a bit of a challenge when it comes to communication lines. But certainly with the power lines, we call First Energy, and then the determination is made whether it's a hazard to the public or not. So there are times where the fire department will stay on scene until First Energy arrives to mitigate the hazard. And there are other times where we'll mark the hazard, usually with the yellow and black barrier tape, where there isn't a serious hazard to human life. So we do the notification process through our dispatch center. I guess, what we have heard tonight about notification, it did kind of hit a chord with me. We have a lot of residents that have generators. And if those residents don't call when their power goes out, that's just information that the power company never gets. So, I think that was someone mentioned it. It was an excellent point that just because you've got a generator and your lights are working, please call and say that your power's out.
Yeah, because sometimes it depends too on how many people call.
Well,
that
they do
determines the
rank by
response.
number of outages.
Yeah.
If you go on their website, you'll see that. And they respond to hospitals and infrastructure first. The hospitals, the police stations, the fire stations. And then what they're looking for is how many people we can get back online first. And unfortunately, if you live at the end of a dead end street and that wire is affecting one or two homes, you're not going to be high on that list.
So call.
All right. So if there are no other questions, that concludes the fire department report.
you.
Congratulations to 5 firefighters having anniversaries.
Oh, thank you. And I should have said something earlier. The 2 firefighters that were sworn in this evening, they've been with us. One of them since 2018, started as a cadet here. And the cadet program takes you to your 18th birthday. After that, you have to become a state certified firefighter. So Jacob has been with us since 2018. Both of those gentlemen you saw tonight have been on the fire department since April of 2020. We weren't able to do our traditional swearing in, which I think is very important. And I had asked the mayor, as soon as we get back to public meetings, I really would like those individuals to come with their family members. It's very different. I swore them in. I gave them their badges. I didn't give them a kiss. But, it's really, it's a wonderful thing. They all left and went over to the fire station for pizza, salad, and a big cake. But they have been working. They both have been at fires, fought fires here in Gates Mills. It was just the first opportunity that we could kind of publicly acknowledge them becoming members of the fire department. Now, that concludes the fire department report.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
You.
Okay, next is going to be the ordinance for second reading, and we're going to follow it. I'm going to move the resolution for the agreement up after it, just so that you can follow. So the next thing on the agenda is ordinance 2021-18. Sandra?
An ordinance providing for the submission to the electors of the Village of Gates Mills, a proposed amendment to the charter of the Village of Gates Mills to renew for a period of 5 years the existing 1 mil tax levy for the public purpose of conserving, retaining, protecting, and preserving land, water, forest, open, natural, or wetland areas in this municipality, predominantly in their natural, scenic, open, or wooded condition, or a suitable habitat for fish, plants, or wildlife, including the acquisition of such real property or interest therein as may be necessary to carry out that purpose, and declaring an emergency. This ordinance would authorize the village to place a 1 mil 5-year levy on the November 2nd ballot. If passed by council, and by the village, obviously, the proceeds would go into the village's existing land conservation and open space fund. The language is exactly the same as that authorizing the 1991 levy and the renewals in 96, 2001, 2006, 2011, and 2016 to be placed on the ballot. There's nothing in this ordinance that allocates percentages of funds to any other organization. It only says that the village may enter into agreements with other entities to execute the purposes of the levy as necessary. It's important to note that this levy includes a 12.5% subsidy from the county. So residents only contribute 87.5%. And that 1 mil would be based on current 2021 property values.
Is there any chance we could move it up tonight and try to pass it, that we can get it on the ballot?
That's a good question, Ed, and it kind of dovetails nicely into my next comment, which is, you know, since there is going to be a change in the agreement between the village and the Land Conservancy in terms of the distribution of funds, council has said that it really wants to look at the agreement first before voting on this ordinance to amend the charter. So I think we are probably well served to discuss that agreement. And then we still have time to vote on both of these, the ordinance and, well, the levy and the agreement at the August 10th council meeting, and have it go to the County Board of Elections in time by September 3rd. So I think your point's well taken, except that we do have time to vote on this in August without rushing it.
So this would be the second reading, Ed.
That would give us time to get more input from village.
Other comments, questions from
Any other questions
Council?
from council?
Mayor, are you taking questions now or after the agreement is discussed?
We
Is
talked about
it-
the agreement.
Is your question about the ordinance to put the levy on the ballot, or is it about the resolution?
For further clarification and the residents and what our say is change. That's why I'm
Okay, you talk, and what change are you talking about?
talking about change in providing eligible funds to the village.
Okay, so that's part of there's an agreement that's always been there.
Yeah.
That is part, that we're going to discuss next. This is about the ordinance to put the levy exactly how it's been for the last 5 times on the ballot.
And it's always been that the money comes directly to the village, to our conservation fund. And then subsequent to that, there's been an agreement between the village and the Land Conservancy, and that's what's going to change. So Mike?
going to change, or is there a saying?
There's no change in how it's come to
The
the,
agreement, the agreement's going to be discussed now by by my colleague. There have been discussions between
Well, let me cover
the
that.
village and
Let me
and
cover
the
that.
Land Conservancy.
Why don't we get to the agreement since that's the question?
Well, we
Okay.
have to, wait a minute,
All
we
right,
have to
so
put the ordinance.
we have the ordinance 2021-18 on second reading. Now we're going to go to the resolution 2021-27.
And this will be a first reading of this ordinance. We're not voting on this tonight. We're just doing a first reading.
Correct.
This is a resolution authorizing the mayor and the clerk to enter into an agreement with the Gates Mills Land Conservancy to provide funds to the conservancy from the 1 Mill Charter Land Conservation Fund. You have a copy in your packet. I thought it would be beneficial to just highlight a couple of elements of this. Again, for clarification for the audience, in prior cycles, when the levy has been approved by the voters in November, in the fall, in November, then the following February, an agreement would be entered into with the Land Conservancy to simply document that if a certain percentage of the funds, historically 95% of the funds, would be moved from the village fund over to the Land Conservancy. After all of the discussions, and if you've been following this, we are proposing to change that and want to have this agreement be concurrent with approval of the putting the levy on the ballot so that everybody is well aware and understands that this will be a little bit different. A couple of highlights. There was for whatever reason, the prior agreement, the one that was put in place in 2016, there was language in it that indicated to some extent that the village council had some degree of control over the Land Conservancy. When we dug into this language, our law director pointed out for whatever reason that was inaccurate. It somehow got into that agreement. There isn't anything like that in here. The only, I guess I call it, relationship between the village and the Land Conservancy is that the mayor can appoint 5 of the 15 director or trustees of the Land Conservancy. So.
Which has always been that way, is my understanding,
Right.
since 1991. Is that correct, Rob?
Todd, it's 5, I think.
I don't know.
So that the village has a say.
I believe it has to do, if I had to make a guess, I wasn't there in 88 when they did this. I would say that it's money levied and taxed to the residents, so council would have input into how it is spent. Oh, good.
Your speaker's off.
Turn your microphone on.
So lucky that I'm here tonight. I actually was here in 1988 when that was discussed and passed. I was the treasurer at the time, not council, not the mayor. That exact concept was discussed, which was this is money that the village is levying upon with the approval of its residents and wants some degree of responsibility for how that money is spent. And so the decision at the time was to appoint a third of the trustees, that the village would appoint a third of the trustees to the Conservancy. I think it's been that way for 35 years.
Thank you.
And by the way, technically the language is the mayor can appoint 1/3 of the trustees, which happens to be 5. So it's not, the number 5 isn't in there, it's 1/3 of the trustees. The specifics, there's 2 key elements, I think, in the new agreement. I guess maybe there's 3 or 4, but I want to highlight one. Which is a goal of the Land Conservancy and something that that was deemed important is that in this next 5-year cycle of the levy, should it be approved, that at the end of the 5 years, the Land Conservancy would be in position, if it was appropriate at that time, to be able to go forward in a stewardship mode, possibly not having to do another levy, maybe not need any more funding, but have enough money in reserve. You could call it something like an endowment. I don't know that it's legally that, but a fund balance that would allow it to be in a stewardship role. And that means being able to maintain all of the properties that are under the umbrella of the Land Conservancy, be able to make sure that everything's being adhered to. If somebody were for whatever reason violating one of the easements or whatever, that they could defend against that, et cetera. At a prior meeting, I think back in maybe it was April or May, the Land Conservancy indicated that their estimate, and from the Land Trust Alliance and some of their homework, that they thought that 700,000 was a reasonable number to target to have funds set aside for stewardship, if that's where they wanted to be, if that's what they wanted to do after the end of the next 5-year cycle. So we worked carefully with the board of the Land Conservancy on how to try to accomplish that. And it's a little bit complicated, but let me try to explain it. We did put an example in the language. So at the end of 2021, the Land Conservancy, their forecast that they did in May 27th, said that they would have approximately $811,000 of cash available in their fund in total at the end of this year, so before the start of the next levy period. Against that number, they have still, or at the moment at least, estimated a 10-year note on the continued purchase of the Clark property that they're purchasing the easements on for $324,000. So making sure that those funds are always set aside. Then the other factor is that over the 5-year levy should generate a little over, well, basically about $1 million, about $200,000 a year of funds. And the Land Conservancy would get 50% of those each year under this agreement. That comes out to $500,000 over the 5-year period. So if you start with the 811,000, back out the 324,000, but then add in the 500,000 that they will get, there's, if the levy's in place, that's reasonable to assume that they will get the 500,000. Then the agreement obligates the Land Conservancy will always have a minimum of 700,000 against that calculation set aside or always available. So the math comes out that they would have 987,000 under this math, 811,000 starting out, less 324,000 for the Clark property, which obviously will dwindle over time, but plus the 500,000 provision starting out, that they would have 700,000 funds that could be set aside for stewardship and still have 287,000 of cash that would be available for land acquisition and the like. So, so this preserves an important part that in this next cycle, and something that I think is very important for all of the villagers to understand, is that the Land Conservancy is changing and their mission is changing and working towards a stewardship role. and that their estimate is that they need 700,000 in a balance to get there. And a very significant portion of this levy would enable that to be in that position, so that they then could be in perpetuity, be an ongoing land conservancy, but not in an active role of buying properties. You should be aware that in a lot of these discussions, a question has come up, gee, why wouldn't you just have the Land Conservancy returned over to the Western Reserve Land Conservancy? And that's a legitimate question. Western Reserve Land Conservancy is obviously a very, very good organization. But the Gates Mills Land Conservancy owns a lot of village property. It's been funded by the taxpayers. Losing that direct ownership, so to speak, would be I think the general conclusion was that really wouldn't be of probably maybe not even correct to do, given the villagers have funded this thing. It's very unique that the villagers have funded this land conservancy all this time. Further, the Western Reserve would not take it for free. In fact, their cost would probably come pretty close to 700,000 that they'd require to take over all of the properties that the Gates Mills Land Conservancy already owns. So again, wonderful organization, but was not something to be evaluated, and seems to be a strong sense that this will continue to be a very strong organization for the village going forward. It's just that over this next 5-year period is a transition time to get it to be in a position to, if appropriate, to go into a stewardship role. There's another important element in the agreement that encourages the Land Conservancy, if the Land Conservancy determines that a particular acquisition would be desirable, but available funds as defined, as I just tried to describe, are insufficient to complete the acquisition, a request with detailed information may be made to the village council for additional funds, and the village council shall have the discretion whether to provide additional funds. I think, at least from my own perspective, I look at this, it meets the needs that the Land Conservancy has indicated. Everybody understands that there could be some property of consequence that could become available and be appropriate for conserving in our village. But to just park funds out there for the possibility with no certainty, nobody felt that that was an appropriate use of funds. But if the need were to come up, perhaps some of the money that the village would be setting aside for its share will be sitting in this conservation fund and could easily be moved over to the Land Conservancy for that purpose. Or perhaps if it's really a big need, that we pass the hat in the village, as has been done in prior times, or whatever. But nobody's trying to suggest that there might not be some more land acquisition. It's just that the need and the extent is not as great and is dwindling, particularly the view of the Land Conservancy. And I think a lot of residents, I've certainly gotten a lot of feedback that we can't keep conserving all of our properties. It's impacting the tax structure of the village. Now, the other half of this is very important, and I certainly get a lot of questions on it, which is, so now instead of 5% going to the village, 50% of the levy funds would go to the village. What does all that mean? I think it's very important that everybody understands that that money will go into the special fund, the fund that already exists, the conservation fund. That money in that fund can only be used consistent with this levy language. The use of any money in that fund is audited by the state auditor. I think it's every year that we get audited. And that's one of the things that they check, is to make sure if you've used money out of a special fund that it's used appropriately. And the important thing is that the language in the levy can cover some expenditures that, looking back, we have funded as a village out of our general fund. Work on Sudbury, I guess it was it Sudbury? Work on Lower Berkshire, on the collapsing of the wall. Those are just two vivid examples. Those were several $100,000 expenditures that could have been funded from this levy language. And in our 5-year budget forecast, where we are facing a deficit, we have a provision in for that kind of thing because it inevitably happens. So the 50% of the funds that will come to that would come to the village, not to the Land Conservancy, would help to address the looming deficit that we are facing, and would still be used consistent with the levy language. So just important. We've got various verbiage in here that covers all of that, but just want to be clear that it's not for road repair. It's not for routine kinds of things that we do with the capital improvement budget. But it could be used for things that do fit under the levy. So the Land Conservancy and the head of the Land Conservancy board is here, as well as Rob Galloway and Nat Smith, who's also very active, are here if you have questions as well. But they have voted as a board 9-0 in support of this agreement. And those that couldn't attend reviewed the minutes and approved those as well. So this has been worked out very carefully with the Land Conservancy. It meets their needs. They don't need 95% of the 1 mil. Keeping the 1 mil exactly as it is beneficial to all of us as villagers, in that we only are paying 87.5%. If we change the language, we'd lose that privilege. That's a grandfathered levy. And it does meet the needs of the Land Conservancy, and it can help 100,000, well, 500,000 over a 5-year period would help to address the looming deficit that we're facing as a village going forward. So.
Questions,
I
Nancy?
just wanted to
Nancy?
comment that the $500,000 would remain in the conservation fund with the village. And if there were no activities that came up, that 500,000 would remain in the conservation fund, either if the Land Conservancy asked under the agreement for additional funds, it would remain there. And if in perpetuity until there were conservation requirements of the village, so that it's not a routine matter.
Correct, not at all.
Other questions from council? Okay, we received some questions ahead of the meeting, and I'm going to have Janet read the responses that were generated by the Land Conservancy and council members in response to them. So the first ones were from Dan Collister. It's this one. Just read.
So Dan had said that he would not be able to attend the July 13th meeting. His contribution would be the following. He attended the video of our June 8th meeting. If you decide to put the Conservancy levy on the November ballot on a 50-50 basis, voters will require that you tell them in advance. And the response there is, yes, we have already drafted some ideas for communicating with the village residents that will include a mailing, home, and a town hall meeting. Communication will come from the village and the Land Conservancy. He asked how the Conservancy plans to spend its share. The Conservancy's 50% share of the new levy fund is not earmarked, but GMLC would agree that at the end of 5 years, it will have retained at least $700,000 for long-term stewardship. Given the Land Conservancy's current balance sheet of $500,000, which includes $200,000 of expected 2021 levy receipts, This means that GMLC would have approximately $300,000 over the next 5 years to spend on operating expenses and strategic land acquisitions. The next question was what the village plans to spend its share on that couldn't be financed by, say, tax revenue. The response, conservation expenses like educational programming on conservation and stewardship, repair and replacement of damage to public infrastructure caused by erosion of water channels, streams, and riverbanks at hillsides, restoration of stream and riverbanks and hillsides, wetland and floodplain restoration, tree replanting program will be paid out of the village's conservation fund rather than spending money from the general fund. The village is facing a structural deficit of $450,000 per year. That was Dan Collister's.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the next set of questions. Question number 1 is from Mike Prest.
Okay, so Michael Press's question number 1. Under the agreement between council and the Land Conservancy, the mayor of Gates Mills has the right to appoint 1/3 of the land conservation's directors. Some might perceive this to be a conflict of interest. Would it not be appropriate to either drop this provision altogether or alternatively make the mayoral appointment directors non-voting directors? The response: since 1991, there has been an agreement between the village and the Land Conservancy that 1/3 of the board of directors will be appointed by the mayor with the consent of council. These are individuals with a demonstrated interest in conservation. They are independent with regard to voting on the GMLC board. Given that public monies are being allocated to the Land Conservancy by the village, it is appropriate for the village to contribute to the composition of the board. These appointees have consistently been contributors to the Conservancy mission. Mike Press, question number 2. Last year, much was made of the new master plan committee headed by Chip Allworder. However, nothing has happened to date. If there is to be a new master plan developed in the near future, wouldn't it make more sense to defer consideration of the proposed new relationship between council and the Land Conservancy until the new master plan is developed? Is it true that the master plan will consider the possibility of changing zoning to reduce the minimum acreage requirement to a new level below the 5-acre spacing established in the current master plan? The response: as you know, the master planning process has been delayed due to the restrictions of COVID. A successful planning process depends upon personal interaction in small neighborhood meetings and broader town hall meetings. This process will be underway this fall. The process will take everything into account that impacts the future vision of the village. Certainly that includes village services, amenities, zoning, finances, governance, etc. You're invited to contribute your ideas during that planning process. The change in designation of funds by the village to the GMLC is coming about because the GMLC communicated a change in their mission towards stewardship and endowment that requires less funding. And the levy is expiring and needs to be addressed now. Mike Press, question number 3. Our green space is what makes Gates Mills unique. It is why we live here. We must preserve it for future generations. Why can't the voters have a choice between the following options? A, no conservation levy. B, conservation levy as currently proposed. C, continuation of levy as in the past. 1991 to 1921. Actually, the amendments to the charter of the Village of Gates Mills to renew for a period of 5 years the existing 1 mill tax levy for the public purpose of conservation is the same as it has been since 1991. If council agrees to place this amendment on the fall ballot, voters will still have a chance to vote it up or down. It is the agreement between the village and the Land Conservancy regarding the distribution of funds that will change, given the GMLC's stated redirection of its mission from primarily land acquisition to stewardship of existing properties it owns or holds easements. Question number 4 from Mike Press. It seems to me that there are 2 separate schools of thought on the Land Conservancy issue. There is one group who places great value on preserving the remaining green spaces in the village. This group believes that further development of green space will irrevocably change the character of Gates Mills. There is another group who is concerned about the budget deficit and who believe that further development is the answer to the problem. Why can we focus on the redevelopment of existing developed properties? Make them better, which should in principle lead to higher property tax as well as higher income families who pay higher income tax. This solution satisfies both of the above groups while preserving the remaining green space in the village. Can this concept be a part of the new master plan? There are more likely more than two schools of thought about development and green space in the village. That is why the master planning process is so important to the future of the village. We look forward to soliciting all ideas as we move forward. Your ideas have merit and are welcomed. And I believe we had two questions from David Atten. Question number one. This is on the levy ordinance. The conservation levy renewal timing has been clear for 5 years. My question, why does this evening's second reading of ordinance 2021-18 require declaration of an emergency? And can villagers expect its third reading at the August 10th council meeting? The response to that is the declaration of an emergency allows the vote by council to take effect immediately instead of the usual 30-day waiting period before taking effect. Should council vote to place this amendment on the fall ballot, it would need to notify the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections by September 3rd. Therefore, the vote must take effect immediately so as to inform the Board of Elections by September 3rd. His second question, in this first reading of the proposed new agreement between the village and Land Conservancy, description of village expenditures which would be eligible for funding from the conservation levy revenues is complex and incomplete. Including but not limited to, he refers to. My question, which individual or body will be charged with deciding whether specific proposed village expenditures using funds from the village Land Conservation and Open Space Fund are totally consistent with the levy language? The council has the responsibility for authorizing the expenditure of funds from the Land Conservation and Open Space Fund through their budgeting process or through voting on an ordinance for a specific expense at a council meeting. This is the typical procedure for expenditures from any restricted fund. Note that all expenditures related to a specific levy are subject to audit by the state auditor to ensure compliance.
Thank you, Janet. Okay, any other questions from council? Sorry. Okay, are there any?
I just have
Craig?
a quick comment. I would urge anyone who has not already to go out onto the village YouTube website and view Rob's comments and presentation to council at the May 27th meeting. I think it's very informative. I think the historical aspect of the Land Conservancy is extremely important to the village. And I think it's very important that residents are aware of the changing mission of the Land Conservancy at the Land Conservancy's request. And I would just, for the record, state that I would urge anyone who has not viewed that to take the 20 or 25 minutes and view that presentation.
Thank you, Craig. That's very, very well said. And I have to say that I've had a couple phone calls, a couple of other emails on it as it relates to this. And we really are trying to work with the Land Conservancy, which I think Rob would again say to you that we're trying to work together on this to fit the needs of the village. And Land Conservancy has always been part of our village since they started. And I think this is a partnership that we're entering into in a different way. So now I'll take some questions. Please say your name and address.
Celeste McClung, Chagrin River Road. So I want to know who actually owns or will own the deed entitled to the land that is currently in the Land Conservancy. Because in the Chagrin Valley Times, there was a quote from one of the council members that said, "The village's master planning process will help to determine how much land should be conserved and how much should be available for development. So what is development? What are we talking about when we're saying that lands could be available for development?
Go ahead, Rob. We don't know exactly what's going to come out of the master plan to start with.
Excuse me, wait, could you elaborate on what you mean by not a long answer? I probably made that comment. That is what a master plan is all about, is land use. There's no way that,
A lot of the answers that have come back to us tonight on various topics have been, I don't know. When we ask details about things for clarification on items, a lot of, I don't know. You know,
I'm sorry,
specifics in regards to this really helpful.
okay, those were small letters. That wasn't the capital C conserved. That was, that the point is on a master plan is fundamentally a land use effort. That says, is there any development that would be appropriate to consider for the village versus not developing? That will be something that would be part of an extensive master plan process. What I think we've said publicly is that we don't know where a master plan is going to come out. It's going to be extensive involvement from throughout the community. Some master plan efforts in other communities do result in a recommendation to address zoning changes. That's not something that happens in an actual master plan, but it may lead to, if you want to do what the master plan says you should try to do, you may want to consider changes to your zoning. That would then take on a whole nother kettle of fish. I speak for myself. I think for all members of council, if there were changes to zoning of any consequence, that would be something that would be brought to the voters. So we certainly don't want to see anything in the master plan that would represent change that is not, consistent or agreement with the village. As far as a master plan addressing conserved property, that's a legal thing. And Rob, maybe you want to.
Maybe it's worthwhile just to, Celeste, to try to clarify your question, and Rob can help me. Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Rob Galloway. I wasn't around in 1988, but 1992 I started. But good evening. Sure. Celeste's question, I believe, was about fee ownership of the title to land. And we just now went off track a little bit onto the master plan, but let me just address exactly that I didn't hear that to be your question. So the Land Conservancy owns land, fee simple. So we own it it's a corporation, and we're separate, as you've heard, from the village. So we're a freestanding land trust, and that's what land trusts do. We also, in addition to owning land, we have what we call easements that other landowners have given to us and said, we want to protect our own land and we want you to be the enforcer. And the legal mechanism to do that is they put an easement on their land and they give us the enforcement rights to always enforce those easements. So if you combine what we own in fee simple and acreage and what we have an obligation to conserve and enforce in perpetuity, it's over 700 acres in the village. And that fee title will never change. That's the Gates Mills Land Conservancy. And let me just make one more point and we'll come back to it. But the concept of creating a fund, we're talking about a fund at the end of 5 years of $700,000, but we have a fund. It's currently about $300,000, and we have set that aside. Over the years, we've built that up because we know we have an obligation forever. I mean, forever is a long time, but in real estate, forever is forever. And so as an organization, we have these duties that run forever. And so other land trusts have found that over time, there are challenges. You can't predict it, but sometimes people challenge, you know, the restrictions on the easements, or they might challenge our title to the land. And we have to be able to defend that, and that costs money. And that's why it's important to have a robust, it's almost a war chest, really, to ensure that we can do what we need to do forever. And, you know, that's where I really think we had an important dialogue with council, and that they saw that too, and they're helping us to get to where we want to be on that. So I kind of have more I'd like to say, but I guess I could respond. But really, to your point, we will never turn our land over to anyone else, okay? Right. Yeah. Right. Believe me, I know it. Right. But we've been able, okay, hold on. There's a question there and there's a question there. So I'll try to, you know, do the best I can. The Land Conservancy as a corporation, it should never go out of existence. And under the law of the law of corporations and the law of nonprofit corporations, it's fundamental, and it's written into like what we call the articles of incorporation of the entity. It always has to be for the stated purpose, which is conservation. So if ever for some reason the Conservancy couldn't keep going, what it would have to do, the board of the Land Conservancy at that time, and we hope that we never get to that point, the board of the Land Conservancy at that time could only do one thing, and that would be to give its land and its easement obligations to another nonprofit organization whose mission is the same thing. So maybe that's the Nature Conservancy. Maybe that's Trust for Public Land. Maybe that's, you know, Western Reserve Land Conservancy. We don't ever want to get to that point, but legally we're bound under all the laws that we could never just like give up. Okay, so that's that answer. But your answer was what's the operating cost for what we do now? The way we came to 700,000 was, and there's different assumptions in here, okay, but our current annual budget is about $30,000 to $35,000, and we would predict in 5 years, if we can pare down some of our activity, and I want to get to that point too, because we are not going out of business, okay? And let's make no mistake about that. We think if we currently generate about 25,000 of our budget from membership. That's villagers paying dues to the Land Conservancy. We have about 175 members. Thank you. I hope you remember, because that funds $25,000 of our roughly $30,000 to $35,000 budget. Our guesstimate would be, if we go into a slightly less active mode in the future, that $700,000 earning 3%, that's a pretty conservative earning, would generate $21,000. And we think we could live forever on $21,000 a year. That's how we work backwards. It's the way you do it. You work backwards to what you need from what you think your expenses are. Right.
Develop in Gatesville. Why are we not, I have this law in the last 5 years that says you can't raise, can't buy structure and raise it on the property to build a new structure. And then that sounds like a
Okay, your second two questions are not for me. The first question is for me. Okay, well, you can ask them that whenever it's right. No. Well, look, that's absolutely wrong. That is absolutely wrong. We have that, look, that is just wrong. So I'm Rob. What's your name? Sorry. Well, I'm telling you, the late Gates Mills Land Conservancy is not in cahoots with the council to create more development. That is not true. Well, that was the question from Mr. Press, I think, that you heard being read. That wasn't an answer from anyone else. Okay, but you asked a great question for me, the first one, which is what is this slowdown? Okay. And I shouldn't have even used that word, slowdown. I don't think that's the right word. Stewardship is not, that word has been used too many times tonight, and that's the point I wanted to make to everybody. It's a good word because it defines what our obligations are to what we already have, okay? But we have been in existence for 33 years. And if you go way back and you look at the strategic plan of the Conservancy 33 years ago, we had maps. We start with maps, right? And we'd say, now, what are the ecologically sensitive parcels of land that would make sense to be conserved or that shouldn't be developed, right? That shouldn't, because it's just bad for the environment, bad for the habitat and erosion and the river, that they shouldn't be developed. And the point is, just to cut it short, we've made just huge, tremendous progress in 33 years. And the fact is, there aren't nearly as many parcels that we had on our radar screen back then that need to be preserved as there were then. And so I think it is a fair point that the mission doesn't need to be as broad on the acquisition front as it was. But the important thing to keep in mind is buying land is only one way that we get land. The other way is people donate land to our organization. They get, well, partly, donating of fee simple outright properties. I don't know the answer to that, but it's some of the parcels that. So that one, that was a $900,000 property and we paid $125,000 and the rest was a gift. So it's not just what do we buy to own in the ground, it's what people have, conservation easements have value too, because they're saying, we want to keep this little corner of our 16 acres, but we'll agree to not develop the rest. That's huge leverage. And for us, like we'll pay something to get, 10 times that. But you need a generous person on the other side, but there are a lot of generous people here. And that's really a large reason the Conservancy exists, is to receive and to watch it. So the acquisition with money is, it's not why we exist. It's a great thing to have the money to create the leverage, and we need to continue that. And I think we will, but I think it's going to shift more towards donation. And we haven't talked about it. I'm coming right back to Celeste, is more engagement with the community. we now have 700 acres that we can engage with residents and do cool things. And part of like, take the master plan, I just hope that part of that master plan is using conservancy land in the way that's educational and engaging with the village. So to me, stewardship, like that's way too narrow for what we should be thinking of ourselves in the future. It should be all the things I just described. And there will be room for some acquisition with money. But I think the fact is that's probably going to start to diminish. Sir, yes, sir.
Trying to set up the end of the period. Then he was kind enough to the original. If I understood him correctly, there's only 200,000 left island over a 5-year period. Just saying 5,000, that's 5 spots.
Right.
So I guess I would. It seems to me you're in the third mode now. Not 5 years now.
I disagree because of what Nat just said. We can lever the 300 to be 3 million if we have generous villagers, and we can receive outright donations. And we want to become more active as a community organization. So I don't call that passive. I mean, I call that active, but in a different way.
I also have a question. I don't regard infrastructure spending form
I wouldn't call it infrastructure. I would call it, we wouldn't be spending it on asphalt or cement or guardrail. It would be on things that actually.
Well, Michael, that's your opinion, but we've reviewed that and it does pass. That is consistent. So that's a difference of opinion.
In your speaker.
Speaker.
For clarification, infrastructure is not in there.
I wasn't thinking about asphalt. I was thinking about building.
What I'm thinking of are many of the examples that the Chris Courtney, has given us. And, when you think about and Chip gave some examples, Sudbury, Karen Lane. The village has a lot of properties right along the river, and the river banks erode. Anne has helped us pass a riparian setback to protect them. At times, those are probably going to need to be protected with, mesh and, et cetera. There are other projects that part of them are perhaps road repair, but another part of them could be considered conservation. So we're going to, if you look at how we've spent our limited funds in the past, they were for community education and, including Chagrin River Watershed Partners, which has been a terrific ally of ours. And we've been a member of that for a number of years. And our contribution, along with the Land Conservancy for the purchase of the Hayes property, which had a gas well on it. That's been the extent of the expenditures. And if you don't think this body, as elected council members, agrees with everything that you've said about the richness of the land and the resources, I just, that I guess personally offends me. And I think there's a balance for how, development occurs and conservancy occurs. And as has been said, it either comes from the budget or it comes from an ordinance and it's reviewed by the auditor. This is no different from many of the other reserve funds that we have. There's a whole list of them. Janet could give them to you.
Bluntly, I think the village is looking to lay off some of their budget deficit on certain.
Okay. Okay. I mean, we do think it will help with the deficit. Yes. Otherwise, we would have to spend those funds out of the general fund. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Most of our capital improvements go to roads and, well, they go to roads. And that's where we spend the most money. And I must say that it would help us if, when we did like Brigham Road, it was a culvert that failed. And then we had to pay for the road resurfacing and construction with it. So it would go toward the culvert part of it, but not the road or the guardrail and the rest of that project. We recently passed a riparian ordinance in the village, which now takes in more waterways and more, and we're getting more and more water. So
Right down the middle of the fairway on conservation, I'm 100% for.
I didn't hear you, Mike.
I said, I think that Ann's work on riparian is right down the middle of the fairway on conservation, definitely qualifies them.
Well, that's all the streams and rivers and everything that we have in the village. David?
I'd like to save council some time tonight. We've heard about this agreement publicly for the first time. This is all new information. It's complicated, it is new, and it's a massive change from what's gone before. And people's understanding of what went before is very simple. This is very complicated, and it's a big transition, not financially, but conceptually. So I was very pleased to hear you say earlier tonight that you want to plan a communication program jointly with the Land Conservancy. We talked about a town hall meeting, which I think is crucial. We have probably 35 people here tonight, and there are 2,300 people in the village. And I think they will all have a point of view on this. I've talked to many, many of them as I've been talking to folk. And I think where you are right now is the language of this agreement will jeopardize the passage of the levy because people do not understand it. And when they understand it, we've been exposed to questions and answers tonight. I think some of the answers were very unsatisfactory. So I think the town hall meeting is crucial before council decides on what sort of agreement they want with the Land Conservancy. So I applaud you for advertising a town hall. I think that's absolutely crucial. And I think you get a lot more people expressing a point of view. As you know, there's a lot of confusion. It's very complicated. It's very new. None of those things are wrong. They need to be corrected. That's all.
Thank you.
So I want to save you time tonight because this is a mini town hall. We want a real one. Thank you.
I'm Brent Stewart at 7520 Brooks Road. And I think a thing here that we've got to, that I think the frustration that most of us have is the inability to participate in this process.
I'm sorry.
This thing came up.
We can't hear you.
The inability to participate in the process. It came up, I think the first time it was introduced to us was probably in May when Rob went through his Land Conservancy pitch. And so this was all cobbled together with, I think, what I would perceive to be limited village involvement, right? So if we were involved more, perhaps we can come out of this thing feeling better about it, right? So right now, we just have to accept that you've come to an agreement with the Land Conservancy. They vote 9-0 that this is the right thing to do. We just have to accept this is the best offer that's out there. And if I were to vote today, I would vote for it because I think it's very important that the Land Conservancy get to being self-sufficient, have this perpetuity of expenses covered. But my point here is, I'm glad you're educating the people going forward, but we're going to go and step into this master plan in 2 weeks or months, a couple of months, and we're going to be back in the same thing, which is, I don't want to feel like you're asking now for my involvement. Well, how come you didn't ask for my involvement on this major thing 2 months ago? Like, what's with that, right? Like, you guys have to be consistent.
The master plan will have involvement in neighborhood meetings.
Right, and I hear you on that, and I'm for that. But why didn't we do the same sort of thing here? That's my point.
Go ahead.
My question is coming up, I guess, is how will we be notified of the neighborhood meeting?
Well, once we know when we're going to start, am I not correct, Chip, that we will then, when we were doing it before, we made a lot of calls and got people from different areas, age groups, professions, whatever. We tried to cover a cross list, and we will contact all those people of when the first meeting will be with all those people. And then we'll find out from the coordinator of the master plan how the next steps will be in. My guess is that one of those people, say it, if you're on it, I can't remember it. Aaron, I think, were you on it? I can't remember. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Let's say Aaron's on it, and she'll then maybe hold a meeting in her area to get input from that location. It'll be, we wanted to cover all, because all different areas in the village are different. So we want to get a cross section. You want to add to that, Chip?
Well, we're going to be dependent on the consultant to lead us through this. There are certain steps, as I understand it. There'll be an extensive questionnaire sent out. There'll be focus groups. I don't know exactly when you go out to the neighborhoods, but she will lay all of that out. I believe all meetings are public meetings, so they'll probably be in this room, and you can certainly be listening throughout. Certainly, what we learned when we tried to understand what a master plan process was all about and go through the process of trying to figure out who to hire as a consultant, communication and community involvement is just critical for exactly the reasons that everybody's bringing up here, is that whatever comes out of that, people feel that they've gotten their input, they understand the process, et cetera. And that was one of our big criteria for choosing the consulting firm, is how well do they help on that regard. So I can't answer more specific, because she will help lay out the time. It's a 12-month process. So
Minimum.
Well, it certainly will be on the website. And I assume it'll be called the master plan, but I don't know more than that at this point, what we'll call it.
Can I just interject? I appreciate the fact that we're starting to talk about the master planning process, which is really huge, and it's coming up in October. But the focus of this discussion now is about the agreement between the Land Conservancy and the village, and I just don't want anybody to leave kind of intermixing the two. I'm just concerned about that. I've been reflecting on your comment, Brent, about, and I think it's a good one. When do villagers individually get involved in discussions like this? And when you think about all the things that the council deals with, there's so many things as elected representatives that you've delegated to us. But there are other things that, yes, we really need your input. And as I think about, and the master plan is one, as I think about this agreement, and I was one of the people that had the discussions with the Land Conservancy. At what point would I go to like an individual villager instead of the Land Conservancy to get your opinion when they have a body of individuals who are appointed, for that purpose? So there's always that delicate balance of when do you go out, at what point, and when do you respect the body that has the authority to make the agreement? So I struggle with that myself. I just resonated with your comment.
Okay, yes.
I'll just, this is really a statement to Land Conservancy.
Speak into
villagers-
the microphone, because we have to record it.
Okay. This is really a statement to Land Conservancy, because the villagers have supported you for 30 years. And you talked about the relationship with the village and with the residents here, who are your support base. And what I don't understand is why you didn't go to the villagers. You send out mailings all the time to village residents, and yet you didn't go to the villagers and say, this is what we're thinking about. This is what we want to do. We no longer can serve the same purpose. Maybe we need to change the way things are. You didn't go to your base, but instead you entered into an agreement with council. And so I'm going to caution you here, because the fact is that if the people who have always given to Land Conservancy and thought the funds were going to Land Conservancy, suddenly realize that you're just going to give half of the funds that they're giving to you, to the village, that's going to be a problem, and you may lose that levy in the fall. That 50-50 split, they may really say, that's just not right. I'm not giving to you guys anymore.
Thank you. Mike?
I'd like to, sure. Well, actually, I think my question will help you, Rob, or at least you should address it. To Sandra's point, she said we need to keep these things separate, the master plan and the Land Conservancy. They aren't separate, they're together. When we define the master plan, that will define the role of the Conservancy in the village. You can't do the one without knowing the answer to the other.
I understand your point. What I was talking about is this discussion tonight. I didn't want it to get off on, or I didn't think it would be helpful to get off on a lot of details about how, when, what on the master plan. So.
Other question, or Rob, you want to respond?
Yeah. I think that, I hear what you're saying in part, Celeste, and we as the Conservancy Board have to always be, mindful and grateful of the support that's been given us. But part of the educating that's happening, and maybe it should have happened sooner, is it's not the Conservancy giving half the money to the village. It's the village who gives the money to the Conservancy. And so either we get nothing or we get half. And we would rather have half than nothing. And so we are out there fighting for the half, okay? Tooth and nail for the half. There are people who would rather we got nothing and that we get flushed down the toilet and go out of business. That we cannot let happen, okay? We won't. But it's not what you said. It's not the Conservancy giving half the money. I can see there could be that perception, and we need to fight that perception in all these meetings. And so I'm glad you said it that way so that I could say to you, that isn't what it is. So thank you for that. Right. It's not. But I'm not sure there is a battle. I'm not sure there is a battle at all, because I'll get to that in a second. Can I call you Andy or Mr. Press or sorry? Michael, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I just lost my train of thought. We all know when the levy is going to come up, right? We know. And a year ago, yes, it does, because it's a five. Oh, well, sure. But history has been that council has worked with the Conservancy to put the levy on every 5 years. And to the point where there may have been kind of an expectation that, okay, it's levy time, we better talk to the mayor and council to figure out how that's going to get put on the ballot. And honestly, the Conservancy wasn't sure it was going to be put on the ballot this year. And so the question became, could we get a ballot? Could we get it on the ballot? And in essence, we were allowed to put something allowed to try to get something on the ballot, but that we weren't going to get the whole thing. There really weren't it really didn't become defined like that. But I think the Conservancy hoped we would be at 80%. That was not going to happen. At one point, I said, I'm not taking something to the board if it's 30%. I'm not taking that to my board. And so, but let me finish to answer your question. So there was, at one point, there was a 60-40 discussion. These were ideas, okay? There was there wasn't a negotiation. They were ideas because we were trying to understand each other's concerns. The Conservancy's concern is long-term stability, and we still want to have some money to do something with. That's our concern, and we express that. I mean, I think we clearly express that. And the village's concern is fundamentally, pardon me, I'm going to try to speak for, pardon me. Maybe there's enough land already that's been taken off the tax rolls, and to have more land taken off the tax rolls would start to, over time, cumulatively be detrimental to the long-term financial health of the village. I think that was fundamentally the concern. So it could have been that we wouldn't even be here tonight and there would be no levy. And the question would be, why isn't there any levy? And the answer would be, because council decided that we're done. We aren't going to at all allow money to be used to, in essence, sink back into the ground and take off the rolls. But, you know, I think we were respected in what we said, and we respected what they said. And frankly, a half a loaf is better than no loaf. I was hoping I wouldn't have to say that tonight, but that's where we are. And honestly, that's why, and we've been reflecting as a group for at least 2 years on the evolving nature of what's our mission and what should our goals be. And so when we talk about a shift, that's a true thing. I mean, we didn't make that up to please the council. I would never have said that if it were that. So it's a true evolution of an organization after 33 years. That was a long-winded answer to a good question. Well, I mean, you know, it's the truth. There's nothing wrong with that. There really isn't. And I don't think, sorry, David, but I don't think it's that complicated. We're getting half of what we used to get. We're glad to get it. We can work with that. It'll set us up after 5 years forever. We don't have that right now. If we didn't get the 500, we would basically be concerned about our long-term sustainability. And so we've been given that. Well, but it's against what? Against zero? Well, why would anyone, if anyone wanted the whole, why would they want zero over a half? I mean, I don't get that. Oh, well, there's a communication plan that's been devised, not by us, but we want to participate in that. But I hear you. Of course.
How many of you have seen the agreement that we're having the first reading of tonight? Raise your hand if you've ever seen it. I rest my case.
Council didn't get the agreement until Friday night.
Well, I guess what I would, Michael, what I would add.
It's not like this levy just jumped out from behind a bush. We've known it was coming for 5 years.
There are a lot of residents here tonight, and I'd like to hear from some other residents. I want to make sure everyone's got a chance. You've got, you know, some people here from the Land Conservancy, and I'd like to hear from some other residents that I see some hands popping up, and please.
Doctor? Oh, sorry, the mask, I couldn't tell.
I just have a question for the gentleman from the Land Conservancy. Yeah, my name is Donald Levinson, and I live at 6705 Gates Mills Boulevard. To the Land Conservancy, gentlemen, does your it seems to me that
your goals change with the amount of funds that are available every year to you? Or is it consistent over time, what your organization stands for and does? Or is it only based on funds that you get each year? How can that change? And that's what I heard from you several times. Am I wrong, or please answer that? Go ahead. Here you are.
The mission is the same. It's to conserve land, and there are multiple ways to conserve land. Some land conservancies don't have a tax levy. We're unique that we do. So we're grateful we've had the money. But if we don't have the money, we have to find other ways to conserve land. It's all about conserving the land. So hopefully people will donate their land to us. And if we've got a little money, we'll use it to do what we've always done. So I don't think the mission changes. It's how we go about it. And we are going to be maybe more limited in what we can accomplish. That's unfortunate.
Okay, so I'm going to, do you have another question?
Okay, I just wanted to say, it sounded to me like your mission was changing because of the availability of funds.
The mission is always the same, but we've bought so much of the land in the last 33 years, or preserved it, that we set out to preserve, that we have a different goal now going forward. There isn't as much land. We don't need to preserve as much land as we did 33 years ago, because the village, we've already preserved the probably most important 700 acres. So there aren't as many important parcels to preserve. And I don't think we ever intended to preserve the whole village. I mean, that's impossible. We'd be a nature preserve.
Okay, so
No, I understand that, but how can you say what is a valuable piece of property today as opposed to tomorrow? You only want to say valuable properties, or what you consider valuable.
With ecological value. So environmentally sensitive properties that have public vistas, hillsides and ravines.
So that's, you're prioritizing is what you're going to do, but your mission hasn't changed. Has it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to move on this. This resolution is on first reading tonight. So there'll be time to go over it and see it, and you can ask questions, send in email questions. Anybody else that hasn't been recognized? Jerry, did you speak on this? Okay.
Jerry Bovins, Karen Lane. I looked at some of the literature that was floating around prior to the meeting, and I did a little quick calculation. If you take roughly 700 acres and you make an estimate of how much land, how much money the Land Conservancy has gotten.
We can't hear you.
You come up with an incredible number. The Land Conservancy has gained control over roughly 700 acres, some by easement, for $6,000 approximately an acre. I mean, that's absolutely astounding. And the only reason they can do it is because the people on the Conservancy, including Rob and Nat and Tom Quintal and other people, was that they gained the trust of the village, and the village has incredible trust for the Land Conservancy. In my judgment, in my opinion, the most respected organization in the village. Now we're in a situation where there's some pressure, financial pressure, real financial pressure in the community. We're coming up with solutions. There's a question here whether this levy is going to pass, and not only would the Land Conservancy not get half its loaf, the village wouldn't get its half either. So I guess we're all in this together. And my suggestion is that if the leadership of the Conservancy can live with the 50% piece, that we look going forward. And to me, this all comes down, everything comes down to this master plan. Because it's at first blush, it's looked at as a zoning review. But what it really is in the village is a review of the valley and all its environmental, all of the environmental impacts. I would encourage council to consider putting land conservancy leadership at the table for the planning function. They're the most respected organization, in my view, one of them, and you may want to invite others, but get them a formal position, not only these informal things, which are good, but get them formal. It will give the credibility of the process increased. It will help pass this levy, which is going to need, Celeste is right, it's going to need some help to get passed. So that's my point. I think everyone is trying to get to the right conclusion. And I know this is a lot of work. It's a lot easier to say you do this faster, make it more open, but it's tough. I know, I appreciate all the effort you put into it. But anyway, that's my opinion. I hope you.
Thank you, Jerry. I think that is a good point. I do think that all the organizations will be somehow a part of the master plan, but I really don't know we don't know all the specifics of who's what and the where yet, but that will be guided by the people that are from the company that we've chosen. I thank everybody for their input tonight. We're going to move on to the next things on our agenda. And
Tell us who is on the master plan committee?
I don't really remember, but I think we have. Right, we'll review it and. Right. Okay, we're going to move on to the agenda. I agree. And that will come out shortly.
Mayor, could I make-
Thank you.
could I make one observation? King Solomon, the Old Testament, did not cut the baby in half. That's where you are.
Thank you, David. Next is resolution number 2021-21. Ann?
I'd like to introduce Resolution 2021-21, a resolution approving and adopting the tax budget for the Village of Gates Mills for fiscal year 2022 and declaring an emergency. And because this will help us pay our bills and do business, I move to suspend.
He's right there. I'm sorry. Sorry, Ian.
Second,
Thank you. Alwarder,
yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Saab, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh,
Yep.
Whitney.
Yes, I move to adopt Resolution 2021-21.
Second,
I had one question, maybe Janet could help me out with this. On the resolution, the amount is 600,000, but
We can't hear you,
No.
Larry.
on the resolution 2021-22, the amount that's discussed is 600,000. But
That's the next resolution. We're
That's the
doing
next one.
21-21.
all right. I'll wait.
Okay, so Frankel doesn't have.
the motion's been seconded. We're waiting for a
Thank
vote.
you. Alwarder,
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Saab, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes,
Thank you. Next is resolution 2021-22. Ann?
I'd like to introduce Resolution 2021-22, a resolution authorizing and directing the transfer of certain sums from the general fund to the capital improvement fund. And because we need to move money in order to do our business, I move to suspend.
Second,
Saab, that was Nancy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, Alwarder,
yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Saab, Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Welsh,
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes.
Did you want to ask a
I
question?
did, thank you. So we're moving $600,000. In the previous transfer, it was 620. And on this page for capital improvement, it was 620. And then on
I
this,
did 300 already this year. This will be remaining. I had 900,000 appropriated to move to capital this year.
He's talking about the estimated
Yeah, and the,
That's for next year.
22.
okay, got it.
Okay. Glad I could help.
Perfect.
And time to move.
I
Right.
move to adopt resolution 2021-22.
I second that.
Thank you. Order.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Hog.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes,
Okay, next is resolution 2021-23. Chip,
This is a resolution authorizing a change order to a contract for the repair and resurfacing of various public roads in 2021 and declaring an emergency, and I move to suspend.
Second.
Order.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Hog.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
yes,
All right, and as you may recall, we just discovered in our budget that we budgeted for the full amount for the work at Chagrin River Road and Mayfield, but in fact, only half of it comes out of this year. So from a budget standpoint, we have this amount of money available to spend and still be within our budget. These were the Deerfield, Hillside, and Overlook were in next year's preliminary plan for road work. And if we wanted to spend the amount that we had budgeted for River and Mayfield, that we don't need this year, it would be for this purpose. So that's the question on the table. So I now, if any questions, otherwise I move to approve resolution 2021-23.
Second.
Order.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Hog.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
yes.
I will make the comment that I drove down Deerfield the other day and I was shocked about the condition.
Yeah, I agree.
Really needs it.
I agree.
thank you. Next is resolution number 2021-24. Nancy,
This is resolution number 2021-24, a resolution approving a lot split and consolidation plat to accommodate the donation of a portion of private property to be consolidated with village cemetery property for the parcels known as permanent parcel numbers 843-34-010 and 843-34-011. This matter came before the Planning and Zoning Commission of the village and was approved that Mary L. Nook, trustee of the Mary L. Nook Declaration of Trust, has determined that they would like to split the plat of and donate a 0.148 acre portion to the village for consolidation with the village cemetery known as 843-34-010. And we're very pleased to see this addition to the South Cemetery on River Road. And find the commission was thrilled that Mrs. Nook was interested in donating this parcel to the village.
How many plots or grave sites does it?
we haven't done any of that.
Okay.
That
I've been
hasn't
working on
really
this for
been
2 years,
plotted.
one thing at a time.
That's fine. I
The-
just was curious.
The plat that was going to be divided has been changed since the last time we looked at how many.
Okay.
So we don't know for sure. It's a little bit smaller than it was initially hoped. So we'll see once Dave has a chance to lay it out. But this is very
Very
exciting.
generous.
Another example of a very generous
Very generous.
villager. So I move, I guess I'm gonna move to suspend.
I don't think she has to. Suspend?
Yeah,
Oh,
because
okay.
otherwise I'll need 3 readings.
Second?
Order.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Hog.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
Yes,
Now I move approval of resolution 2021-24.
Second.
Order.
Yes.
Frankel.
Yes.
Hog.
Yes.
Steinbrink.
Yes.
Turner.
Yes.
Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
yes,
Okay, next is resolution number 2021-25. Nancy?
This is resolution 2021-25, a resolution accepting the donation of a portion of the parcel of private property to the village of Gates Mills for consolidation with the village cemetery property and authorizing the mayor to enter into a donation agreement therefore. And I would move to suspend.
Second,
Is that Chip?
I guess.
Alwarder?
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Just for the benefit of those in the audience, the resolution itself expresses heartfelt thanks to Mary L. Nook, trustee, for this generous donation. I would move approval.
Second.
Alwarder?
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes. Thank you. Next is resolution 2021-26, Larry.
Oh, you have a question.
Oh, sorry.
She'll ask the questions.
Okay. This is a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a third one-year extension of an agreement for the provision of school resource officer services with the Mayfield City School District and declaring an emergency. And the reason for the emergency is that school starts, I believe, August 11th. So we need this to go.
Anything changed?
Second.
No, no changes.
I seconded the suspension.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Alwarder?
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
And make a motion to accept resolution number 2221-26.
I'll just make a quick
Second. Oh, I'm
quick
sorry.
comment. My two sons have been at Gates Mills Elementary the last 4 years, 3 of which Officer Arch has been there. A fantastic role model for the students, playing basketball, playing kickball with the kids. And so I can't think of a better role model and person for the job. So.
All right. We all agree with that. Yep, thank you.
Yes.
So the motion to accept resolution number 2021-26.
Second.
Alwarder?
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner?
Yes.
Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes.
Okay, next is not on your agenda, but I'm making it as an add-in. I need a motion from council to accept Dish Network as a tenant on our Carpenter Road cell tower. Chip, do you want to say anything about that?
They are expanding rapidly after that, whatever took place with the T-Mobile merger of Sprint. And so they are trying to go to existing towers and get added this year, apparently for whatever budget window is open. So they've requested, and per the agreement with American Tower that owns the lease, has the lease on our tower, we need to give approval first to allow another tenant go on the tower. Todd says that we get money for this. I talked to somebody in American Tower and they said it's just a fixed rate with us. So whether we get any more money, it does offer more service to the village. And it's certainly not a bad thing. If not, it's probably a good thing. So
How many years is the contract for?
Suspend this?
don't know.
Do you want to move?
Okay, so I move to suspend.
No,
No,
we don't
just
need
move
that,
to-
just a
We don't
motion.
need
to
it.
approve.
Just a motion to approve.
Okay, Alwarder?
Yes.
Frankel?
Yes.
Sog?
Yes.
Steinbrink?
Yes.
Turner? Welsh?
Yes.
Whitney?
Yes. Okay, are there any business from the audience? Okay. Come up to the microphone.
There's a history there. So I'm a little bit concerned, obviously, whenever anything happens there. And so it is a pure a gift?
Yes.
Like there's no land swap, no any of that other nonsense that went
No.
on before?
Yes.
Okay. How many acres would it be, or is it just a fraction of an acre?
We don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
How many acres?
Oh.
Well,
Wait, the acreage,
The
point
acreage is
four.
0.0, what I just read.
The one you said the south was 0.14, and I'm talking the.
Zero.
One,
No,
four,
No,
eight,
she's
eight.
talking, that she was talking about the amount being donated.
Oh.
0.1488 of an acre.
Sorry, I thought there was 2 events here, one is south and one.
No, one's accepting the lot split and one is accepting the donation.
Oh, okay. And so it's 0.148 acres. Okay.
For the south.
We had to affirm the lot split So they're
Okay.
splitting off a piece of, the Nooks are splitting off that little edge of their property that adjoins the cemetery.
Okay,
And there's been a negotiation over how much they want to give us.
okay. And the one at 781, I thought there was another one on the North Cemetery, no?
No,
Am I
Nothing
totally-
with
not that-
cemetery.
Oh,
not
okay.
happening.
Then ignore me. Let's go.
Good. Okay.
Nope.
Any other questions?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Walworder,
Yes.
Frankel,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Steinbrink,
Yes.
Turner, Welsh.
Yes.
Whitney.
So
Yes.
who's making dinner. Since Ours is closed now.
And, you know, I did want to comment for Craig's benefit. This is the shortest council meeting we've had in the last couple of years, isn't it?
Welcome, Craig. Out of the frying pan.
Yeah.
All right, you want to sign?
Oh, yeah. You want to call over there and see if they'll take us still? What did I say?
You know,
What did I say?
even working them in, but no, they're not good now.
What?
So.
You didn't stop the recording. The recording stops when you power it off, so.
So we don't have to do that.
I just wanted to make sure the recording, I'm gonna head back there and just check on the recording. No, I just want to make sure that we didn't error out. Right now. Is that okay? Oh, yeah.
I'm ready. And it's only got a couple
I
more.
gotta let her sign these.
Start walking, I'll meet you. Nancy, I'll have my salad with grilled chicken. Chagrin. Yeah. On Romaine.
We'll talk to you next Thursday.
Sounds good. Yeah, sounds good.
Thank you.
We're gonna, can I resign?
That's enough time, right?